We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
It was the dramatic end to the trial of the century.
Upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in count 2 of the information. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, further find the special circumstance that the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson...
A young Kim Goldman, distraught by OJ Simpson's acquittal.
I wasn't thinking of anybody but my brother, and in some ways feeling like we let him down.
25 years after her brother Ron's murder, a sister's quest for answers.
I learned very quickly that the truth doesn't really need to show up in a courtroom. Honor doesn't really have to take place in a courtroom, because it didn't give us what we deserved.
In a new podcast, Confronting O.J. Simpson, Kim comes face to face with one of the jurors who rendered that controversial verdict.
Let me say this. That deliberation was already set long before they started asking about this evidence. What it was is they wanted to cover up the fact that you've already come to decisions.
Kim says the juror admitted to her that after nearly 2 months of testimony, they reached a surprisingly speedy verdict.
At the 3.5 hours that they graced us with of deliberations was all kind of a cover-up.
So that was all BS?
To me, it was.
What was your reaction as he's saying this to you?
Oh, I was mad. I was trying to keep my composure, but I was mad, and I basically said, you didn't do your job. We didn't think so, and you just proved my point that you didn't do your job.
We're a family that wanted justice, simple as that. Wanted the person that violently, viciously butchered 2 people to be held accountable, to pay the price.
Today marks the anniversary of the day that Ron was brutally stabbed more than 20 times alongside Nicole Brown Simpson.
Where are you 25 years later in grieving your son?
I think for me, it's every day for 25 years has been a day without Ron there. To not be able to see him growing and fulfilling his dreams. Ron would be 50 now, and I can't even fathom that makes sense to me.
Kim says she usually spends this day privately visiting Ron's grave, but this year is different.
I sort of felt like this is my year. I'm kind of going back in time. I'm revisiting conversations. I'm revisiting relationships. I'm facing fears. I'm facing some truths.
In her podcast, Kim talks to some of the key players involved in the case who became household names, like prosecutor Marcia Clark.
To my great regret, more and more got heaped on my shoulders. More and more I was being pushed out to talk to the press. So I was running literally 24/7. Believe me, I hate the memory of that.
And Cato Kalin, that famous Simpson house guest.
So how do people treat you after the trial?
They would spit at me, having actual hate. So many times I've gotten messages of, you should have been the guy that was murdered.
Kim says she didn't know what to expect when she started the project.
It was bigger than all of us. For me, I wanted to know the impact of that and what got left behind in the wake of this.
Beyond rehashing the details of the trial, she also explores what grief looks like decades after a violent crime.
Those of us that are living in it, we have to figure out a way to make room for all of that throughout the day, whether it's grief or the loss of it, the anger from it, the emotion that comes with it. We got to figure out where to put it.
Kim says her big brother was her protector.
My dad raised my brother and I from when we were 3.5 and 6, and he was a single dad. My brother and I just always knew we could rely on each other.
Every picture I have of them in my mind is the 2 of them together, holding hands, or together in some format. That was who they were, and it never changed.
What was that moment like for you when they broke the news to you that it was your son who had died alongside Nicole Brown?
We found out in the most bizarre way. It was a phone call from the coroner's office, basically saying, did you hear about the death of Nicole Brown? And I said, what does that have to do with me? And they said, well, your son was the other victim. And, I was shocked, overwhelmed.
You felt it was really crucial that you break the news to Kim.
Well, I didn't want Kim to hear from the news or from anyone else. Sadly, I had to be the one to tell her.
He said, did you hear anything on the news today? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he He just basically said that Ron died. I remember just falling to the ground, kind of screaming and crying.
Attention all units and stations. Attempt to locate 187 suspect.
The Goldmans couldn't predict the circus that would follow, all playing out in front of the cameras.
Last name was Simpson.
Peter Jennings at ABC News headquarters. Let's immediately go to a picture in Los Angeles.
From that white Bronco chase, watched by 95 million people, to that unforgettable courtroom display.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
OJ's lawyers, dubbed the Dream Team, argued the validity of the police evidence presented in court, an argument that resonated in a community grappling with mistrust of the police, with the memory of Rodney King and the LA riots still fresh.
And I can appreciate that people have distrust for police departments. That happens all across the country. But for a family who's sitting in the room, looking across it and seeing the person that they believed killed their brother or loved one, you want all that to go away, because that's not what's supposed to be on trial. What's supposed to be on trial is the actual evidence, the facts, the science, the witness testimony, and that wasn't really the focus of this case. It was everything but that.
A year after the criminal case, OJ Simpson was found liable for the deaths of Nicole and Ron in a civil trial.
The judgment for both families was $33.5 million, split. Has he willingly paid anything? No. The only justice that would have mattered, when it comes right down to it, is that he would have been in jail or on death row.
But in 2007, surveillance video captured Simpson stealing sports memorabilia from a hotel room in Vegas. The charges landed him in a courtroom once again. The Goldmans were there. This time, Simpson would end up in prison, convicted of robbery and kidnapping. But in 2017, he was released on parole.
And so when he was released back into society, the hairs on my neck kind of went back up again. I know that supposedly he's, in Vegas.
Recently, Simpson was seen in these newly released photos taken last week.
He has had his life continue over all these years. He's had opportunities to do things Ron didn't.
Simpson told the Associated Press, "We don't need to go back and relive the worst day of our lives. The subject of the moment is the subject I will never revisit again. My family and I have moved on to what we call the no negative zone. We focus on the positives."
OJ Simpson to this day maintains his innocence.
Does he, though? Does he really say, I didn't do it? I mean, does he? I don't think I've ever heard him come out and say, I didn't do it.
Today, Kim says she likes to keep the focus on honoring her brother's legacy by fighting for victims' rights.
We want to make sure that the story shifts back to Ron and Nicole, because we're not the only victims across the country. There's people that are victimized and traumatized on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, and that's where the focus needs to be always, and so that's why we choose to talk about it.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.